business world has now been hijacked by Tennessee boys. You got Steve Krull, you got Nate Brown coming at you from Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And Steve, what town?
Buchanan, because if you say it Buchanan, they know you're not a local.
I love it. We've got Dolly to the east of us and Elvis to the west. We're right here in Middle Tennessee. So good stuff.
Absolutely.
Well, Steve, you got an amazing topic for us today. We just had an incredible challenge from Thomas in the area of authentic marketing. We're going to stay on the theme, the heartbeat of marketing, and talk about digital marketing, bringing the digital experience and the human experience together. So, Steve, can't wait. Take us away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nate. I'm glad to be here, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and throw my screen up. We'll do a little more about, I won't talk a lot about me because you can figure that out along the way. Nate, thank you for the introduction to One Business World and Stelios. I'm really, really happy and thankful to be here. I'm really most thankful that all of you are here and you're giving up some time to come out and learn and giving yourselves the opportunity to grow. Today's topic for me is the digital marketing lifecycle, the 5 stages explained. You might have read about 5 stages. Everybody's got a little bit different take on it. I've got a little bit different take on it too, but that's okay. Figure out what works for you, but also put it to work is really what the key is. All right, so next slide's a little bit about me. I'm not going to spend time here. I'm just going to let you know I've been in the digital space for coming up on about 20 years. I was in-house. I started my own little agency, and Be Found Online has been around. We are now in our 12th year. So I've been at this a while. I've seen a lot come and go. And there's a lot about this space that I love. I love the evolution. I love the constant change. I love the constant challenge. The constant challenge for me is strategy and building strategy into digital marketing campaigns and digital marketing life cycles. So this image is going to act as our agenda for the day. I took what was one of our blog posts. We talk a little bit about digital marketing life cycle as well as strategy. And I just put the labels on this process picture to say, this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to start with strategy. We'll go through the other 4 areas as well. We're going to talk about this. The idea is that establishing a great strategy up front with the right metrics and the right tracking and reporting, you're going to be able to learn from your campaigns and you're going to be able to do it again. The key is to set it up for success at the beginning. So I'm not going to bore you with this slide too much more because we're going to dive right into some of this stuff immediately. Also, if you've got questions, drop them in the Q&A, whether yours is there, or there. Feel free to drop them in. We'll get to them at the end. I believe I've got about 25 to 30 minutes of your day. And again, thank you for spending some time with us. And away we go. All right. Strategy. What are you doing up front to ensure the success of your campaigns? What does winning look like? When does winning look like? I know I played with words there, but don't worry about it. What does winning look like? So your boss walks in and says, Susan, I need you to launch a campaign against the water purification manufacturers in the United States. And you look back at Melanie and you say, well, great, Melanie. What should your first question to Melanie be? What does success look like and when do you need it? Is it a week? Is it a month? Is it a quarter? Is it a year? Most of us are on annual planning schedules, so you'll hear me talk about the annual planning. But the reality is that even if I'm running a campaign for a week, I want to know what my goals and objectives are, and I want to know what success looks like. If I'm running it Sunday to Monday, Monday to Sunday, I want to be able to report to my boss on Tuesday morning against the goals that we defined before I started. I might win, I might lose, but at least we're on the same page. So figure out what those are. I should know who my target audience is. I should know how I'm unique. So what am I going to do to message this? Maybe it's a new product launch, or maybe we're tackling a different part of the market that we're not used to. So why should people care? That comes into this as well. But the one thing that sticks out to me in this is we're talking about strategy and we're looking at little things, but what is strategy? That's kind of my $1 million question here. So if I think about what is strategy, let's define it for our purposes. You might have heard a little bit about it as I set up this slide. And what I want you to think about in your takeaways is how you can effectively add even an ounce of strategy at the beginning of your campaigns. And is strategy a plan? Well, no, because if it was a plan, then they'd be synonymous. Well, is strategy a tactic? Well, no, that's a tactic. Is it an initiative? Is it a channel? Well, no, it's not. So for our purposes, I want to define strategy. How we're going to win the next period. I mentioned weeks, quarters, months, years. Strategy is that, but it's more than that. I need a plan for next week. I need a plan for next quarter. Probably don't have a plan for the year because that would be a little foolish to plan more than 90 days out. But I might have milestones for the year. Is that my strategy? I'm not sure if that's my strategy. So how do I think about this thing? How do I think about this thing strategy? It's kind of a crazy question, right? So I'm going to share with you what we call the BFO Express Strategic Planning Framework. This, and we're not going to dive in too deep because, again, we only have a little bit of time to spend together today. But it starts on the left side, defining goals, timelines, metrics. What are we after? If I need to make $10 million by the end of the year, well, great, I need to know that. How am I going to make $10 million? I need to know that too. What's my budget to make $10 million? I'd really like to know that. Do I get 2 million to make the 10? Do I get 5 to make the 10? What do I need for my ROI or my return on ad spend? So I need to know those numbers up front. So I want to think about that up front. Second step, brainstorm. We're doing stuff today, guaranteed, right? We might carry some stuff over if it's a new product launch for stuff that's worked in the past. We might be thinking about new channels. We might be a direct to consumer product and we're thinking about TikTok influencers. Great, all good stuff. Brainstorming is absolutely one of my favorite places to be in this, because when I'm setting up goals, I look out a year and I say, what's going to make me successful and happy 12 months from now? What does the success look like of this campaign? And I always think about that personally and professionally. What does it mean for your career if you nail this thing? What does it mean for the company if you nail this thing? So maybe you get a $2 million budget and really you want to get 6 to 8 million, but you want to set a target of 10 because that would be really good for everybody all the way around. I'm not sure if we can get there. Sometimes we don't know those things until we start, but we put that up front in goals. Then we get to brainstorming. Open season. All ideas are good ideas. This is never the place to tell somebody that it's not going to work, no, or I don't like that idea. This is just open brainstorming. This fuels and fosters creativity. There's a thing in improv called the yes and in improv. Most people say yes, but when they're going to say no, 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 no. Yes and builds on something. It might go a little crazy, but it should be a little bit of fun. Build out that list of ideas. We don't have to kill anything yet. You're going to see the cream start floating to the top even as you build this list. The next piece of this, score those ideas. How long will it take? And do I have enough time? If I've got a 6-month idea and a 3-month goal, not going to work. If I've got a $250,000 idea and a $50,000 budget, not going to work either, right? So think about time, cost, how much money is it going to make? I might have a $50,000 idea. That's pretty cool. And one of these ideas, if I could make 50 grand to my $250,000 goal, maybe I can layer it in with other ideas. So it doesn't mean it's a bad idea. We just have to figure out what the rest of the ideas look like. So now you've got your scores back. Think about priority. What's top of the list? Where are we going to start this thing? What are we going to be able to do knowing who our target market is, who our audience is, what our budget is, what our goals are? Where do we want to begin to learn? Where can we start getting the most good audience information? We want to build our first party data. I want to understand who these users are, who these buyers are, who's engaging with my products and services. So I want to make sure I get that, right? What's going to give me some information? So I'm going to start with an ideal client profile probably, or some persona that I want to go target, whether that's an industry or vertical or a subset of one of those. I still know who I want to talk to. Maybe I want to talk to managers in engineering. Maybe I want to talk to only electrical engineers. Maybe I want to talk to accountants. Maybe it's senior accountants, junior accountants. Doesn't matter. We need to know who we want to talk to. It starts building our audience. So we set our priorities that way. And now we have our priorities like, oh, I want to start with these 3 or 4 initiatives. Maybe we do the TikTok influencer campaign. Maybe there's content marketing there. Maybe there's some paid media, or maybe we're going to do paid social just to support TikTok because that's going to be in social. We'll back in and we'll do maybe some Facebook ads. Don't know yet, but this is why we go through brainstorming and scoring. We're also testing our comfort levels, right? There may be some ideas that show up. We scratch our heads and go, well, we've never done that before. Doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Just means we haven't done it. And then finally, we get to execution. And what I like to do in execution is I like to set things on 60 or 90-day timelines. It takes a while to launch a campaign, takes a while to collect data, takes a little while to learn. Once you've gotten this thing running for a little while, your learning should increase and accelerate. Your ability to change, modify little things will increase and accelerate too. So this is generally speaking, how we go about most of our strategic planning for our clients. You see on the bottom, strategic vision is the first piece of this, and strategic plan is the next piece. This all comes together, and the overarching strategy contains all of these elements, so that when Susan is working again with Melanie, she's looking at her and saying, well, Melanie, what I've done is I've done some brainstorming with the team, and in the next 6 months, what I'd like to do is I'd like to see if we can get to a $2 million threshold. I need a budget of maybe $300,000. Here are the initiatives that I want to work on. Here's how I want to launch, and here's what we're going to do and learn along the way. It doesn't have to be all science and rockets. Maybe not all the documentation has to be pretty or perfect, but it has to be good enough to make the case to Melanie. Melanie's going to have to report to her boss too. So there's this idea that we need to be able to roll this uphill. Does Melanie care about clicks, cost per clicks, keyword rankings, things like that? She might, but her responsibility as my boss is to look at the bigger picture. My responsibility as her employee is to give her that view. If she wants to dive down deeper, I'll give her that too. We're not here to talk about reporting well yet. All right, keeping this train moving. I know we don't have a ton of time together, and I'll stop saying that now. How am I doing so far, folks? Just resonating? The idea of strategy, setting the table for everything else that we do. Again, questions, drop them in the Q&A. If we can't get to them today, I'll be happy to follow up. My contact information will be available later too. You can always send me a note that way too. So stage 2, let's get started. Let's execute on the chart you saw above. What do we know? We got to build campaigns. We might need to have a content calendar. We might have to do some stuff, right? So how are we going to get this thing launched? What's phase 1? What's phase 2? This I look at as my first 90 days. I want to get to work. When I get to work, I don't have any data yet. I've got a lot of good ideas. I might have historical data, but I got to start somewhere. I got to implement. So great, I'm going to build a campaign. How fast am I going to do it? That may depend on budget. I've got some ideas about budget flighting. We'll talk about a little bit. The main goal is save some money for later. It's the way I try to look at it. Corporate budgets don't always work that way, but there's squishy room and stuff. So your responsibility is not just to sell to your target audience. That's certainly a goal, right? Melanie wants her $2 million. Your responsibility beyond is to start learning more about your audience, the people you're targeting. What do they look like? What are their likes? What do they click on? What do they engage with as far as your content goes? Did you put a bunch of videos up on YouTube and run some ads to push to those videos? And did those convert really, really well? Maybe. But this is where we start the process. So what's stage 1? What are we starting with? And then let's get some traction. Let's invest in that traction. Let's build and optimize our campaigns. We're learning right now. When we start to learn, we can start to scale. So think about when we scale, we've got our conversion data. We're starting to learn about our audience. We're starting to learn which ads resonated, which platforms resonated. Maybe we launched on only one platform. So let's say we launched on Google search. Great. We know that platform. We know our ads. We know our keywords. We might know a landing page that's converting. What else have we learned about our audience? Is it really that target persona, or is it a little different? Can we tweak that? Or maybe we've realized that, guess what? We built in email on top of this because we know maybe our conversion funnel is a bit longer. So we wanted to increase our audience size, keep advertising, know that we're talking to the right people, and then start an email campaign. This is a good place to do it too, right? So using these insights that we've gathered, we're expanding based on the knowledge gained. The other beautiful thing that happens here is you can take lookalike audiences and you can try to find them elsewhere. I can go to programmatic, I can go to paid social. I can even think about tailoring my content from an SEO perspective to my audience characteristics. An aerospace engineer probably isn't going to read the same articles that an electrical engineer is going to read. It's just the way it works, right? They certainly have overlap, right? They're both Yankees fans or something like this. That part's not as important as figuring out who your user is and what's going to resonate with them, and making sure what you're putting out there, that you're seeing it. You're seeing that they're engaging and consuming with the campaigns and the content you're creating. So cool. So now we've launched, we've expanded. We're doing 2 things. Ideally, we're converting right now. We're still learning. We're collecting data. And I don't know how much you follow the analytics space and cookies and death of cookies and such, but this is a great place for me to put an asterisk on the side and say, Google is threatening to officially kill the cookie in Chrome by the end of 2023. Great. That gives us 18 months from now to collect or grow as much first party data as we can. That's going to be a great thing for us as we start doing more of this. I just got a battery warning from my computer. That's not right. I think it's charging now. So cookies are going to go away. So we want to increase our audience characteristics of first party data. We want to make sure we grow that database of our CRM. And these might just be suspects. These might be people that could do business with us later. Doesn't matter. We might have people that we want to put in the database today for use next year. It's a good time to grow your database. The other thing it's a good time for, again, back to the analytics and tracking part. If you're a Google Analytics user or Google Analytics company, Universal Analytics is going to be sunset in the middle of next year. But what a lot of people are doing now is moving toward GA4, so they get year-over-year data. But also GA4 is going to have a lot more in terms of engagement statistics and audience statistics. So when you're thinking about this audience, you're thinking about being 3 years down the road. I know it's 3 years down the road. Still good things to think about. All right, let's talk about stage 4. Let's talk about data. Let's talk about where we got to, right? So this is where we're reaching sort of the tail end of this thing. And we want to understand more and more about these users. I keep talking about users. This is what we're after. We're after this audience description. And by now we might have split our audience description into 3 or 4 different groups. We might have different people that convert in different ways, but this is great stuff we can learn. If we're in the lead generation space, think about how you can build workflows in your marketing automation platform. And you probably heard a lot about that earlier today, right? Build out a workflow. Build out a workflow for audience A, audience B, audience C. Yes, it takes time. The good news is you can sometimes copy and paste those. But then your resources that you build within those, whether it's a download or it's a form, it tweaks a landing page. It's a little different based on that audience. So here we start to learn what more and more of those characteristics, what's resonating. I always throw attribution in here just because I think that because most platforms are last click tracking, we find out what the last click was. We should look back to say, what of our content, what of our resources or advertising resonated early in the marketing funnel with this audience. I know what they converted on. Maybe it was a paid click ad or an organic click or direct click to the website. Great. Where did they start? And was I good at it? So maybe I learned that. Maybe I look at attribution and I learn that. Maybe I think about it. Where can we go from here? This is where we start thinking about where we can go from here. By the way, at stage 4, we're still running our campaigns. We're still learning, but we're looking critically at the data and we're trying to expand. Trying to expand so that as we continue to grow our marketing, we know more and more about this audience. So finally, we look at this and think about our audience. They went from un to known. Now, yes, you can successfully make an argument that the audience was not unknown to begin with. I had some history. I had some ideas. I did some research. Great. But I should have a much better idea as they walk through my funnel about those audiences. So those audiences, when they become known at the bottom of my funnel, I can take them and I can expand them. And so when I get my known audience, I get this group, then I build a lookalike audience. That's a giant ring around them. So I've expanded my audience size and I have a real opportunity to market to them in much different ways if I expand the audience size. So this is sort of, again, it's sort of a play onto that stage 4 about what I can do with the users and data, but I'm going from un to known. Pretty good stuff. Now, I might not know their name and address and send them, holiday cards, but I know who they are. I know who's buying from me. I know who might be engaging and not buying. I know who's engaging and not buying or not buying. It's really, really cool stuff. And the data and information can help you a ton. And there's a reason I didn't put reports and analytics in here because you all see your reports and analytics a little bit differently. You might have a different platform. You might just have it configured differently. I'm not here to tell you which platform to use. What I'd like to suggest is you need data to do your job. Melanie needs data to do her job. And if she reports to somebody else, they need data to do their job. All right. We talked about known and unknown. Let's talk about how we plan for next. All right. We don't celebrate enough. We get paid to find problems. We get paid to drive revenue. Celebrate your victories. Not every part of this strategic campaign has worked for you, but there's stuff that did work. Hopefully you not just hit your targets, but you knocked them out of the park. And if you didn't, there's reasons for that too. Celebrate the learning. You'll identify gaps in your strategy as you walk through this and you look at your data. don't try not to key in at just the lowest level data. Move through those 3 levels and ask yourself those questions. Ask your boss those questions. Then what you're doing here is you're actually starting your strategy over again. We always play with these calendar dates and we say, oh, we're going to run this for a year and then we're going to start again. Well, the problem is that this stage 5 tends to have to begin before the end of year 1. So you're kind of in month 9 or 10 and you're starting to think about next year. And the boss isn't going to let you turn off the campaigns for 2 or 3 months. At least I don't think they will. Well, can I have 2 months off the campaign so I can re-strategize for the next one? Not happening. So we're looking and thinking. The good news is you've got last year's strategy laid out. You can dust that off. You can figure out what worked and what didn't. You can shortcut a little bit getting into next year. Don't shortcut the brainstorming because there might be new stuff, new technology. The other thing to think about is when you get into stages 2 and 3 here, when you're running your campaigns and you're scaling, maybe you're adding on other channels or platforms. What I want you to think about is what changes are happening in the business. What changes are happening in the marketplace? What changes are happening in the tech? Just because you built your campaign strategy that runs a year and you've got a plan to get you there and you've listed your priorities does not mean you cannot change. I'm going to say it again. It does not mean you cannot change. What I don't want you to do is do an abrupt stop and say, that stinks, we're going away. Now, I'd like to listen. If all bets are off and nothing's working, then by all means, stop and think about it. But generally speaking, there's something some things are working, some aren't. So don't throw the baby away with the bathwater, as they say. And then what you got to get in here and do is you got to start the cycle again. So you got to start thinking and planning. Hey, what worked? What didn't? What could work? What should work? Wait, something should have worked and it didn't work. You'll find this stuff out. You'll see it in your data. You'll see it in the conversation. You'll have it in the conversations with your teammates and maybe with your boss as well. Find out what worked. Maybe you got to $8 million and not the 10 you had hoped for. Great. You still made it over 6. 6 was the baseline, right? Oh, the other thing about setting goals, there's a really cool thing to do about good, better, and best goals. Maybe some of you do this already. Some people call them stretch goals. So there's the goal. Maybe the goal is 8 million and the stretch goal is 10. Put them both on the wall. Maybe there's a place where Melanie comes back to you and asks the question, Susan, hey, we're trending pretty closely to the 8 million. Do you think you can get us to 10 million? Give me a couple of days to think about that, Melanie. And you go back and you do your homework, talk to a couple of other folks on your team, maybe your amazing agency, name be found online. Just kidding. We are an amazing agency, but you don't have to talk to us. But you go back and you think about it and you say, well, Melanie, you know what? The numbers indicate that we're not going to get to 10 million at the current budget, but if we had X more dollars, we might have a chance. We've got 4 months left in the year. If we were to add some budget, we might be able to get to 10 million. I know we can get over 9 million and we have a shot at 10. Great for those conversations. The reason you can have those conversations, you and Melanie's boss have the same view. You're looking at the same set of goals. You're looking at the same initiatives, same platforms, channels, same messaging, all the same things. You're looking at the same campaigns. Those goals and KPIs, those become the pillars. Everything that you're building toward is that pillar. All righty. Final thoughts, and then we'll get into some Q&A if we've got a little bit of time left. We've got 3 or 4 minutes. Before you begin any of these campaigns, I know Melanie wants to get stuff started immediately. And guess what? There's time and a place to just launch a campaign and it works. It's cool. But strategy leads to success. Good strategy leads to good success. Know what data you want. Build that early dashboard. You can evolve it, but know what data is going to give you an insight into those metrics that you need. Always try to understand your audience before you get going and never once take them for granted. Please don't take them for granted. Then launch, learn, and grow. Expand surgically. You might even be expanding in bulk too. If you just know you want to be on a platform and you have to go there, that's great. I always tell people to practice patience, 30, 60, or 90 days. Give your hard work time to marinate. 1 week is usually not enough time to measure your success or your failure. And then adapt. Follow the data, plan for change. And the last one's a little tongue-in-cheek. Have I mentioned strategy? And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found some great things to take away from today. There's my information if you want to catch up, follow up. Nate, I'm going to give you back the microphone and see what we've got left to do.
Oh, don't go anywhere, Steve. It's just me asking you a couple questions. Awesome presentation, great energy. I love your heart on this area of marketing. And so here's a quote that popped in my memory as you were talking. I want you to respond to this famous quote from Peter Drucker: "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." What do you think about that?
Uh, Culture dominates. I mean, agency life, right? You need to have a agency. Sometimes clients are wonderful. Sometimes they're not so wonderful. You've got a great culture. If you've got a great culture, you can build good strategy for clients. And ideally, your culture comes first and your clients know who you want to work with. We have a simple motto internally, and that we want to work with clients and brands that give a damn.
Mm.
So we try to be selective in who we work for in that regard by working with people who we think share some of our values.
I love it. I love that. So your BFO ESP strategic framework, it almost looked to me like the Socratic method of gaining clarity on all these, just asking all these brilliant questions. Where do you often find that people get stuck in that question asking process?
I think what happens is you need ground rules in those things. We all defer to the boss.
Hmm.
And we've done this several times before. You give presentation to a team, you ask the boss to kind of keep quiet. Um, there's Michael Hyatt, who is a leadership coach. He has a saying, and I know he borrowed it from somewhere, but he always says you can't learn with your mouth open.
Ooh.
And if I want to learn from my team, I want their ideas. I'm not in the trenches. My sleeves aren't rolled up. The boss knows where the business is going in the market. So get in a room. And I also suggest that the boss not be the facilitator, because then they become the chief mouthpiece. Bring in a facilitator if you can. Otherwise, choose somebody who's relatively neutral.
Wow. Yeah, that can be so helpful. Changes the dynamic in such a powerful way. So we had an individual in the presentation right before. He had this brilliant and interesting example of how Patagonia was very exclusive about who they served. So it's this idea of finding your audience, and I saw that in your presentation there of going through that cycle of collecting all this audience data and then isolating who you want to serve. How aggressive do you get in terms of being very selective about who you partner with to do business with?
Ooh, we've said no a few times. We've fired existing clients. We've not taken on new clients. So when we recently we're relooking at our ideal client profile, and we built in some interchangeable parts.
Mhm.
So and we had this we kind of had a protracted conversation about, well, where does this one go? Where does that go? And then we stopped and said, do we agree that everything here is on the page? And we said yes, and say, okay, let's put it the rest.
Nice.
It's that idea of looking up at that along with your values and your culture to say, is this a fit for who we want as a client? And there are times and places we have to say no, but you know as well as I do, we all need to make money. So you try to manage your compromises in that.
Yeah, love it. Okay, very, very quickly, last question. NPS. There's been much debate. Is it dead? Is it helpful? How do you feel about NPS?
We tried it. I know several agencies who've tried it, went through, it's just, it's not helpful. I mean, for us, it wasn't. It
Yeah,
wasn't, we weren't getting enough data back.
yeah.
So therefore, it wasn't providing directional insight. And
Mhm.
we found it better to ask our clients at the tail end of a call, or say, hey, Jim, would you and Sue mind staying on the call so we can talk about how we're doing? Or we reach out, having somebody in management reach out to say, hey, how are we doing?
So more conversational feedback, and for your clients, guiding it into that area of conversion and engagement is
Yeah.
more the metrics you're looking at. Okay.
Yeah. And you can go back, put it in a spreadsheet or database if you want. Oh, they gave us a 9. Great.
What does that mean? Yeah. No, love
Right.
it, Steve. Thank you so much for endowing us with your wisdom. We'll have to hang out and do some hot chicken soon. Uh,
Count me in. I'll be in Nashville in a couple of weeks.
Sounds great. Thank you, everybody.
Nate, it
Have a
was a
wonderful afternoon.
pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon, folks.